Welcome back to another episode of the Black Cinema Experience
Podcast.
I'm your girl, JB.
And I'm Cameron.
This week we have a super exciting, really eccentric, eclectic, blackety black film for you to review. We watched the Book of Clarence. No, we didn't just wait for it to come out on Netflix. We could have saw it in theaters, but we watched the Book of Clarence, and let me tell you guys, this movie's super eccentric. It makes you expand your thinking, and it definitely puts you outside of the box for the usual, story of Jesus in Bethlehem that we have been trained over the years to hear. It really takes an eccentric spin on a story that we all know way too well, and it even pokes fun at some of the things that we've seen just over the course of our Christian lives, right?
Exactly.
Cameron, for me, I know my favorite part of the movie is the cast.
Mm-hmm.
They did an excellent job casting this film. But tell me some of the names that you saw in this one that you thought were like, oh, what? Didn't expect to see that person in here.
I mean, besides the white actors that we saw inside, but just seeing Alfre Woodard, who's like a legendary actress, Teyana Taylor, which I think did an amazing job.
She did.
Always does. She always does. There's David Oyelowo, who we talked about before in the After and other movies we've seen. I was shocked at how many people they got for the movie.
I mean, star-studded black cast as far as I'm concerned.
No, seriously, it was like a lot.
It's so many that I have my phone right here to rattle off a few more names of some really important ones. So, yes, exactly as you mentioned, Alfre Woodard, David Oyelowo. Caleb McLaughlin. We got Omar Sy. Now, if you guys watch that show Lupin, he is an awesome actor. He's gorgeous. I love him. And he plays Barabbas. So that's who that is. We also had Benedict Cumberbatch. That was an interesting little turn of events.
I was shocked. I was like, what?
Of course, our starring actor, Lakeith Stanfield, and of course, his bestie, RJ Cyler. These are some of the people that, for me, make this movie like really, really star-studded. To see Lakeith and RJ Cyler in another film, I love that. After seeing Harder They Fall and to see their chemistry there as just two knucklehead best friends, seeing them again in the Book of Clarence was really a fun dynamic, right? To see like that black male friendship, to see just them on screen together. This film was written by
James
Seymour. James Seymour,
who wrote The Harder They Fall, which is like the whole bringing everybody all back together again, which I thought was, like you said, very amazing.
Exactly. And we also have one of those star-studded producers as well. Jay-Z helped produce this film, as well as James Lasseter and Tanda Najenda. And I'm sure I'm saying his Tendo Najenda. I hope I'm not saying it too bad, but some really great producers on this one. And my second favorite part, the musical score.
There's some bops in there.
It was one of those like movies where every song was made for this film, like handcrafted for just this movie. There was one song where they're kind of like in these little sandcastle dune type things, and it's like a slow Egyptian type one, and there's a girl dancing, and I'm like, they really thought about this song for this scene. And while it's not the usual thing that you would normally see, like, I don't know, like just to see black people, just to see black people in this element and to have this music be curated and it not be the atypical white music, right? When I say white music, I mean like Mummy Returns, you know what that soundtrack sounds like when you're in a sand cave and you're like hearing all the little like Arabian Nights. Exactly. It was so entertaining for me just to hear like the musical score and how they had like black voices, very strong black voices, singing these songs with that Arabian Night twist to it. So it was really a thoughtful musical score, and I enjoyed that as well.
It made it make sense. With the cast that they were portraying. So it went along very, very well.
Exactly. Cameron, what did you think about this film?
I thought it was very interesting because it's something different again. Like you touched on it earlier, but so many of us have been raised Christian, so we all know the story of Jesus by heart. we know, obviously, we've been told it multiple times, and we've seen it. Everybody's seen the Passion of Christ, so we all know what it entails. So to have this interpretation of a character that was during that time whose story is like lost. Is what I was getting. That's what I got. I thought it was a very interesting interpretation. I thought it really did open my mind to certain things, and have a different outlook. Like one of the big things he kept saying throughout the movie is knowledge is belief, as like and obviously coming from a religion that's based on faith, I thought that was like such a contrast to keep perpetrating that, but still telling the Jesus story essentially. So I actually really liked the contrast. I thought it was pretty interesting. No, it's not like a historical telling of Jesus. I don't think it's like blasphemous in any way or anything like that. So I thought it was a really good movie. I would definitely watch it again.
I think that this movie was one of those special films for the skeptics, because there's a lot of people who are skeptical about religion and have questions about it. And the entire movie, he was protesting religion, even down to when he got baptized, by this man of God who's baptizing him in the water, but calling him all types of terrible names and almost drowning him. Yeah, like there's the skeptic, and then there's the reasoning why he's skeptic. Like even when he got saved and thought that it would make Jedediah like lay off of him, it's like, it's so funny that you thought that getting saved would make the villain leave you alone. Like that's how important religion was in that time, where it could have protected you and people had pity on you or whatever. But he was a skeptic the entire movie about religion. I enjoyed seeing this side of it, because in Christianity, just growing up church based, right, you don't spend time questioning God. You don't spend time questioning the Bible. You don't even question the things you don't understand, because you learn as a young Black child that you need to stay in a child's place. You understand as you get older, keep reading the word, you're gonna get it. So I thought that side of it, having a side showing like the skeptical, I'm not sure what this religion is, or I'm not sure if he's real, like seeing that skeptical side of his character was really, for me, like part of the reason why I was so enchanted by the movie. Yeah, I really like that. Now, I'm not saying that this is a good movie. I do want to preface that. I'm not saying that it's a good movie. I am just saying that it definitely was one that tested the bounds of some new things, like getting high and literally floating.
I like those parts. I think that was my only, I guess you could say, critique. My thing is, I felt like this could have actually been a very powerful movie had it been more serious. But I thought it was funny. Like, I felt like a joke a lot of people make is that Black people can't take anything seriously. So I thought this was like a good take on that, because what is more serious than like critiquing religion, especially for Black people. So I thought that was like, kind of like maybe a reason why they did that, like poke fun at certain things, like especially in some of those serious moments, they would like make a joke and then like transition out to something serious and then make a joke again, But I thought it was hilarious at certain points.
Yeah, I do too. And you know what? You know what the thing is though? A lot of movies that go back in time like this and like basically reenact certain big moments, they do make it a parody. This was not a parody. I watched this movie the first time thinking that I was about to laugh my ass off. I just thought that there was going to be all these little scenes that were going to just have me cracking up. But in reality, it was a story. It was a story of a man who was trying to get right so he can get the girl that he liked and, not owe anyone any money, essentially. It was not a comedy. There weren't any moments to me where I felt like it was just like out loud, like ha ha ha, like laugh at, like you normally would see with this type of film. Like everything was kind of in a way very serious, even down to how it was shot. His mom telling him that he stinks and he's on the floor and the camera's above him and he's like, I do stink, and it's like, it's not necessarily a parody in that way where they're poking fun at the good story. It really is a story of a skeptic. Like to me, I took it very seriously.
Well, I feel like I understand what you're saying as far as taking it seriously. I got that, but I just feel like some of the moments and its timing made it have comedic effect. But again, I would say it wasn't.
But was it comedic effect? But was it comedic effect, or was it how they were addressing today's social issues?
That's why I got the comedic effect, because I feel like essentially, even though these people were 2,000 years are before us, that they were still essentially experiencing the same things we somewhat experience today. So I feel like those were those moments of like modern critique. But I thought it was still done very humorously.
Yeah.
But again, I do feel like it was definitely they made some very strong comments about today. They were doing some very, very like they would have very, very serious dialogues and drop like little nuggets here, especially like when Mary, like not Mary, but his mother Amina was
Yeah.
like, they always take our boys and stuff like,
They was checking our babies.
yeah, stuff
Yeah.
like certain things like that. So obviously, like like that's very serious, and they address those moments very seriously, especially by the way it was shot. But I don't know. Sometimes I was just like, oh, this is very comedic.
You feel like it was comedic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not the whole movie. I'm saying like those different moments. I actually could have essentially done without those moments. Like I feel like they didn't make or break the movie for me. Like
Yeah.
they didn't necessarily have to be there, but I did enjoy them when I did see them. Like when they were training them, they're like this. He was like, oh, the gravy is good. Like, you know, but it's like one of the most important aspects of Judas portraying Jesus, especially when they did it all serious when everybody froze and made like the picture of the Last Supper. I thought that was like, oh, but then have a little comedic.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying with the comedic element there. I do see what you're saying there. I again still go back to this is a different take at a story we know, right? Like instead of having Judas do something so like outwardly to, you know, betray God, it was like, oh, we're making a joke. They did make a joke out of it. They're like, the one who's who dips his bread in the gravy is the one who betrays him. And it's like, okay, this is how they're outing him. So I do see where there was comedy elements to it. But then you had like Mary Magdalene getting stoned.
Yeah, that was crazy.
And, you know, like him having that moment where he's walking on water, or his introspective moment that he was having with his twin brother. Even the moment where he was like telling Mary and Joseph, like, I want to learn your son's swindle tricks. Like I want to learn how to do it. I gotta learn, you know. Even that moment I thought was like really interesting, because back in that time, right? Because we don't know what it was like, but you know, we have all these people that we have now with their minds and the way that they think. I can only imagine that somebody was thinking the same thing as him at that time. Like, oh, what if I became a Messiah? God's getting us attention. What if I was to do something like that, you know? But one thing I thought was really cool about this film, let me get off of that. Let me get off of that.
No.
One thing I thought was really cool was the way that they were choosing to use like magic or not, you know? This movie was more magical than the magical school of Negroes. This is what the magical school of Negroes wished it could have been, because Lakeith had weed, they were getting high, and when they got high, they had great ideas, they were floating. Then, you know, when Mary Magdalene got stoned, she was able to get healed. Like that was like a whole scene that happened too. Like there was like all these little elements where it's like, okay, they're using magic to show us an idea. And I thought that was really cute and like a really great way to show us like the miracles of like God, because even though we got Lakeith here being a skeptic and nobody's actually stepping up being, you know, God himself, you still have these elements of like essentially magic because people have faith and whatnot.
So. Well, and again, like you said, like the way that they would shoot it, I felt like certain times they made it seem like kind of a magic trick. Like obviously when they're smoking, they're getting high, you know, they're floating. But when it was like more serious, like with Jesus, it seemed to be a miracle. So it kept taking us back and forth between the skeptic or is it just a magic trick? Like which is what obviously what Clarence was feeling.
Exactly. Now you just said Clarence, and I think that's funny, because one thing that they did when they made this is they wanted us to be very clear about who was in love with Clarence and who just thought nothing of him. The people who thought nothing of him called him Clarence. And that's why when he was in love with Jedediah's sister, and he said, "You're the only one that, you know, says two syllables when you say my name." You know, Clarence. Yeah. Everyone else, Clarence. It was like, that's so funny. But it's just down to one of those, like, put some respect on my name type things. Like, and I think that with like any movie that has Lakeith in it, I feel like there's always all these little subtleties that you have to find everywhere. And I'm not even saying it's Lakeith's doing. It could be James Seymour's doing, since he's on everything that Lakeith is doing.
Exactly.
But there's these little subtleties that like are just reminders, like respect the black man's name. You know what I mean? Like there's these little just very subtle moments that I enjoyed. So I thought that was really cool about this film too. Were there any parts about this movie that you disliked?
I wouldn't say dislike. I feel like for me, I feel like it was a big swing. Cause I feel like I was getting so many different things, like you were saying, pertaining. That's one thing I feel like it's always hard when you're making a movie, especially when you're trying to incorporate such a dynamic black cast and you want to present all these issues, I feel like sometimes it can be a bit much, but I feel like it wasn't out there like other movies I've seen, like Sorry to Bother You and stuff like that. Which again, I'm not.
How did I know we were going to talk about that?
Well, because I feel like it's hard to like make a movie when you're, especially. I feel like this movie is like that. It does critique race. Obviously, that's why they have a movie with black people in Jerusalem. Like that's always been like a huge debate. People are like, Jesus is black versus white Jesus. That's like one of the biggest arguments. So this being like the whole Cassie being like slap in the face to major media, I love that. But I feel like sometimes it was like some things get too ambitious. But overall, I do think it was a good movie. I just feel like it was like sometimes there could have been things we could have drew in more instead of like just dropping nuggets. Like
again, this is a problem that. And I can't say Lakeith has it because now I'm really thinking this is James' guy. This is the problem with certain things that he touches is that it's too many wonderful ideas.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal, stellar, outside the box, brand new, innovative ideas that we need to take and separate. And I'm not saying to dull it down, but to... Oh, well, yeah, I guess I'm saying to dull it down because he really does a great job incorporating these new ideas, but you don't have to give us all of them at once. Matter of fact, you can use less tricks. I think Ms. Ari used to say when we were kids, and she would be like, save those tricks. Like you're doing too much performing. Like
exactly.
Like doing a whole lot in one film is not a requirement. You can really make the moment better by focusing on one moment. And for me, what I would have liked to see a little bit more is his resolution with the girl that he was in love with. I wish I would have saw more of him like actually making things work with her and like, I don't know, coming back, or I don't know. I would have liked to see more of that and less of the, they're taking our babies. Yeah. Like, no, this is all like by choice. Like, I don't want to see movies where black men are still not taking ownership. Like, this nigga really was gambling. He really lost his money and his horses. He really owed Jedediah money, and he really scammed his way to get the money. And when he got the money, decided to buy slaves from somebody else to make a reasonable point. Like, no one should be slaves, and no one. And we're basically, he became a martyr in that moment when he decided to buy slaves instead of pay Jedediah. So for me, and he's walking with the cross, and I'm like, this is choice driven. All you had to do was pay Jedediah. You didn't have to do this. You were selling weed. You could have figured it out. You could have paid Jedediah, stopped gambling, went on about your life. But instead, you decided to be the fake Messiah, and now you're surrendering your entire life for what?
I mean, in the end, essentially I don't want to ruin the movie, but spoiler alert. But,
spoiler alert!
Exactly. But he gets redeemed, and I guess that's like the story of Christianity in a nutshell. There is redemption for anybody, even the crooks and criminals. So I do understand, and again, that's a whole nother message.
Another message
trying to accomplish, trying to add that into the movie, but I do agree. Like, I mean, we got to take some kind of self, like some responsibility.
Accountability. Exactly. Yeah, like, it's accountability.
Because yes,
he got into them situations all by himself.
You're a grown man at this point.
And if Jedediah's sister decided to be with him, you're a fool. You're dating a man who gets himself into trouble and then looks at others to get him out, and then still suffers the consequences like a man when he could have simply avoided all of this.
Yeah, I mean, but then we wouldn't have a movie. But hey, I guess we have to learn. Hopefully, people will learn from, Clarence's mistakes.
And I also on that, in that same vein, respect what they were doing with the whole like 12 disciples story. But I don't really see why there was a need for Clarence to have a twin brother. He could have just had reflective moments looking in his reflection, like he was doing, throughout the movie at certain points, like looking in a black image and seeing himself. I don't necessarily see why he needed to have a twin there.
I thought it was so he had some type of way to be connected to Jesus, but yeah, I do understand what you're saying though. It's like,
yeah, there was a tie-in so he can get like basically so he can go to someone and say, hey, like I want to be part of the 12 disciples. So there was like that tie-in for him there.
Yeah, but it was still very.
But we didn't need to have two Lakeiths. You don't think it could have been any other disciple that could have been his brother? Any one of them niggas could have been your brother, and you could have went to one of them like, hey, like and for the sake of story writing, Judas for the sake of story making Judas the sibling
Mhm.
that he has to go to for help, and knowing that Judas is going to betray God later on, and that would have been a better angle.
I like that angle. I thought he chose Thomas because Thomas was considered doubting Thomas before, like the disciple that doubted. So having him be like, the one that's converted, and then Clarence being still skeptical.
Do I not know enough about the Bible?
No,
is there a disciple there's a disciple that's a doubter? Is that what it is?
Yeah, Thomas.
Thomas is a doubter disciple. Ooh, I did not read his story.
Well,
he has his own story. Saint Thomas.
No, well, he does have his own book. That's not in the Bible, as you know. No, I'm saying, but doubting Thomas is the one that he said, "I wouldn't believe Jesus resurrected until I see his hands and touch his holes in his hands with my."
Okay. He's in the Bible.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have his own chapter.
No.
Yeah.
Not
because I would know that. Because I do know the Bible.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
that was a harsh one.
It's all good. But I do understand that aspect, because if you are a skeptic, you would think the biggest skeptic would be Judas, essentially, because he's the one that betrayed Jesus.
That's true, but Judas. I see. Because Judas believed in God, he just was a sellout.
Yeah. Well, we want to talk about all the time, but all of them was trifling. They all ran when Jesus, taken away. So it really could have been any of them anyway. But no, I do feel like it. Like there were certain things that you're kind of like, it's excess.
Yeah.
The Cleve Stanfield playing 2 parts.
Excess.
Yeah, it's like
could have cut that part out.
He did a good job. Obviously, he always does a good job, but it didn't need to be.
Didn't need to be him making all the money to pay back Jedediah, and then giving extra money to the guy that owned the slaves. Mm-hmm. Sir, your friend helped you get the money. Mm-hmm. You don't think you got to pay anybody? You over here tipping Jedediah? You're tipping this man for taking on the slaves? Like, there was just certain parts I'm like, I could have deal without that.
Like the whole Barabbas being immortal, but not really doing anything with that. Yeah, but anyway, yeah.
I love the fact that he was immortal, though, because he was really kicking ass. But also, he could have really defeated Lakeith if he, needed to. He didn't in that fight scene.
He wanted to be free.
He wanted to be free. I loved it. It was different. It was creative. I had a blast watching this movie because it's not something that you... Here's the thing. Most movies now I feel like are very predictable.
Yeah.
And this movie wasn't. I enjoyed the fact that, and the thing is, the story when you're a Christian. You know the story of Mary Magdalene, the story of the Bible, the story of saving people and waking up Lazarus and all these stories. And to watch a movie that has all these little hints of those stories that and they're telling them completely different, it's worth the watch. It's creatively worth the watch. But yeah, I enjoyed it, how it was shot. I enjoyed the casting. I love seeing all the Black people there. I love reimagining a time where any movie that existed up until this point would have tried to imagine us out of it, or only let us be in it as slaves.
Yeah.
And not, just people. So I mean, I loved that. I love seeing Black people having a different lane to occupy. Anything else you want to add to this movie, Cameron?
I say support it. It's on Netflix. Go give it a thumbs up.
Yeah.
So he can get some more funding and make some more movies.
Yeah, so he can slow down on rushing all the ideas at once. Yeah.
Well, he did this thing on The Harder They Fall. I thought that was like a masterpiece. So.
It is a masterpiece. Also, one person I forgot to mention is the guy that plays Jedediah is also Silas in BMF first season, a complete and total villain, a psychopath, the craziest of the crazies. So if you do watch this movie and you're like, that guy looks familiar,
that's where it's from.
It's from BMF. And if you haven't seen BMF,
get it together.
Yes,
get it together.
Anyways, guys, thank you for watching another episode of the Black Cinema Experience
Podcast.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.